Well, as Facebook looks to build an Instagram for kids, long-term effects on their mental health is driving concern for parents and doctors alike. So joining us now is Dr. Jacqueline Sperling. She's a clinical psychologist, faculty at Harvard Medical School, and also the co-founder and co-program director of the McLean Anxiety Mastery Program at McLean Hospital. Dr. Sperling, thank you so much for being here. So let's just dig into some of the recent research that you've done showing the impact of social media on young people. What can you share with us?
Oh, sure. And not specifically my research, but research in general has found that use of social media has been linked to depression, anxiety, sleep disturbances, low self-esteem. And the key thing to differentiate between those, the different types of use of social media, there is something called active versus passive use and self-oriented versus other-oriented use. And it's the passive use and other-oriented use that tends to be the most linked to the negative impact on mood and low self-esteem. I can give examples of those if that would be helpful.
Please, yeah. Can you dig into the passive versus active and what it is that you're seeing in terms of how it affects younger people?
Sure. So an active self-oriented update might be updating your profile. That activity in and of itself is less linked to a negative impact on one's mood. However, passively scrolling through one's news feed creates opportunities for social comparison. That's an other-oriented activity. You could see a user receive more likes on a post than your post received. You also can see examples of social exclusion where friends of yours were gathering at an event to which you were not included. And also the use of filters on pictures distorts one's perspective of what is a typical body type. And that also can negatively impact one's self-esteem and body image.
A lot of the activists I've talked to have raised particular concern about kids who are feeling particularly vulnerable in their developmental stage and how the effect of social media might be particularly exacerbated for those kids as they're kind of learning to grow up. What can you tell us a little bit about kids' development and how it might be affected by social media?
Well, particularly that research has found that the younger the age that children start using social media, and particularly girls, the more likely there is to be a negative impact on their self-esteem and their mood. And you think about these kids are going through puberty, their bodies are changing, it's already an uncomfortable time, peers are becoming more important in their lives. And so the opportunity for social comparison, and when people are developing at different rates, high. Also, that their brains are not fully developed and they do not have fully formed impulse control. It's like they don't have the brakes in a car just yet. And so I think there's also an increase in opportunity where people feel emboldened to say things that may not be kind on a social media platform through a screen that they may be less likely to say directly to one's face.
Dr. Sperling, can you talk to us about what role you think some of these social media platforms play in mitigating some of these concerns? I mean, Naomi Nix is here with me, and we were just talking about the comparisons to big tobacco back in the day. I mean, do you think that Facebook and some of these others can do something about it or should do something about it?
I think the fact that we now have data to suggest that there are negative impacts on one's mood and self-esteem, and particularly recent research that has come out for specific apps, I think it really behooves the people who are developing them to adjust the apps to support the users that are so regularly using them. At the same time, and they can do that, for example, by making it sort of form of, you can communicate with people directly, not necessarily sharing updates and pictures and of the like. But that may be far down the road if they choose to do that at all. That may not be a motivation of theirs. So I think it also is on families to learn how to tailor their own use so that it doesn't negatively impact their mood.
And what does that look like? What can parents actually do?
So I am a believer of seeing is believing. So users can do something called a behavioral experiment. That's rate your mood on a scale from 0 to 10, 10 being the most intensely you can experience emotion, 0 not at all, before you use an app. So it could be I'm a 7 happy, 4 sad, 3 worried. You use a social media platform, you can pay attention to on the time we're using it. Also, in terms of is it other-oriented, self-oriented, active, passive, and then determine, afterward, re-rate your mood. And if you're finding that you're feeling worse about yourself, then maybe that can motivate you to adjust how you use it. And it could be curating your newsfeed. It could be unfollowing friends, but still remaining connected. If you find that certain people's posts make you feel worse about yourself, it could be finding activities to do right afterwards. So it kind of limits the amount of time that you spend on it, whether it's you're having a phone call with a friend or going out and socializing with friends. So really trying adjusting one's activities based on the data that they've collected to see how it's impacting them.
Jacqueline, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the types of people who are most likely going to be vulnerable to negative effects because of social media. Is it that fact that people who might already be depressed, their depression might get worse because of social media? Or does social media essentially affect people who were already mentally healthy in a worse way?
The recent research that came out that found that people who are feeling particularly vulnerable were noticing that using the social media apps made them feel worse. At the same time, the research has also shown that you don't necessarily need to be feeling particularly sad or down or not great about yourself in order to experience this impact.
Right.
They even, in terms of there was a study at a university where they just had students who didn't necessarily meet criteria for certain mental health disorders, and they put them in two different groups, and they had one group use the social media apps, these three apps, the same amount they typically would, and they were recording their mood throughout this period of time. And then they had another group restrict the amount of use that they had, and they found that the group that had restricted it actually reported better mood than the other group.
It's fascinating stuff. Dr. Jacqueline Sperling, clinical psychologist, also faculty at Harvard Medical School, and the co-founder and co-program director of the McLean Anxiety Mastery Program at McLean Hospital. Thank you so much. Also, thanks to Naomi Nix, Bloomberg News social media reporter, who is here with me in studio today for all your reporting and for your time.